I want to talk about Greenland. What's the big deal about Greenland? Everybody's, they keep hearing about Greenland, and yes, it's a part of North America, meaning it's north of Canada. It's pretty cold up there. So people try to call it just a block of ice. We've heard that it's not just a block of ice. This is land, a land that once belonged to indigenous people. Matter of fact, indigenous people still live there, and the population goes back at least 2,000 years, in Greenland. There's some fascinating, points you can make about the people that live up there and what they've, endured, the elements, the cold, how they had to hunt, fish, gather, stay alive, and they managed to do that for thousands of years. And if you know the history, I would call them the Norse or white Europeans. I would call them even Vikings got there around 900s, around that time up until the 1400s. They were going back and forth. They settled in some areas, but not permanently. And if you keep looking at the history as it developed, a lot of them left. But then people came back, including the Danish. The Danish came back and settled, and along with other Europeans, they began to see the benefits and the strategic benefits of having that piece of land there, especially in the 1950s when Denmark, I think it was 1953, annexed it or took it from the Danish. So Denmark's been in charge of that land supposedly officially, but the truth is the United States has had its eye on that land and checking that land and making sure that they control that land the whole time. The United States knew about this land, about the strategic importance of this land, even up until during World War II, when Adolf Hitler, the Nazis, a lot of people, even the Japanese, they feared the Japanese would come and do something because, the truth is, Europe is not too far from there. Russia is not too far from there. And you keep hearing a lot about, strategic and military purposes. Why do you want that? Well, it goes back to that controlling the land. And so Greenland has been around. But my point is that it's been indigenous land for a long time that was stolen from the get go. And, what's interesting is a lot of the colonization that happened, a lot of the colonization that takes place with indigenous cultures. Not only is their history erased, their languages are also erased, their traditions, their practices. That way, people, even if they're indigenous to the land, have no connection to the land, because without language, without culture, without these things, you don't have a connection to the land. Right now, we're hearing a lot about Greenland, but what about the indigenous history? And actually, I want to take it just a little bit further to the 60s and 70s as something I might be doing a little bit more on later on, especially because indigenous cultures all over the world have suffered as a result of what I'm about to mention. And that's what happened in Greenland in the 1960s and 70s. There's evidence that doctors, European doctors, they basically, without their consent, inserted these devices that prevent women from giving birth, getting pregnant. And this was inserted into women and girls without their consent. This is not new. This happened in the South and throughout the United States of America, not just to Black women in the South. That was purposely done. We know about that today. Thank you to Angela Davis's book. If you ever read, I believe it's called Race, Class, Gender. It's a really good book. It talks about that. Uh, but they also inserted, they did this to Chicanas, indigenous women in living here in America. Whether you're Puerto Rican or or of indigenous background, you were prevented from having children. It's a type of genocide that occurs, and it's one that's sneaky because you think you're doing it for medical purposes. You think you're doing it for medical purposes, and you're doing a good thing, or at least that's what is told to you, or is brought out and prodded. But turns out no, it's done to limit population growth. It's done to limit your expansion because you're going to give birth, and that's exactly one of the things that people are looking at. In Greenland, why did this occur in Greenland? Well, same thing as why it occurred here, and that's why it's important for us to know this history of Greenland, because it's not just the people who were already there. If anything, NATO, who all of a sudden cares about Greenland. If you know anything about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that was established following World War II, it was created to prevent the spread of communism. And supposedly that was its goal, and actually it achieved its goal. It achieved its goal for the most part by defeating the Soviet Union. But NATO continued, and what NATO, even though definitely I'm not going to back 47. Don't get your words twisted here. But NATO, where have you been? Where have they been when it comes to African countries? Where have they been when it comes to Central and South American countries, especially the poor countries who are not white? Where have they been when their governments have been overthrown? And I ask that because NATO, like other, governmental bodies, or bodies that control or try to manage, affairs of the world, uh, they're sneaky. They want it one way, but when it comes to indigenous, black populations, Asian populations, they're nowhere to be found. But when it comes to European populations, therefore Greenland, all of a sudden, Norway, who has a claim on Greenland right now, and they're saying that this is wrong. Taking it from Norway is wrong. Let's take it back to when the indigenous people were already there, and that was wrong too. And that's my point of all this. You're going to hear a lot about Greenland. You're going to hear a lot about Greenland on the news. You're going to hear a lot about why the current president wants to take Greenland by force. And by the way, that's colonizer talk right there. If you ever heard of colonizer talk, if you know the history of colonizers, they come and they take things by force because they believe that it belongs to them and that you have nothing to say. It's best for you. Shut your mouth. I'm going to take what I want. That's colonizer talking. A lot of us who've been around, we know that. Historically, when you look at some of the colonizers from the Spanish who came in 1519 to Mexico, Hernando Cortez, supposedly, he was going to civilize these people. Same thing with Christopher Columbus in 1492 civilized these people. The Pilgrims in the 1600s here in the United States of America civilized these people, right? Yeah, that whole trend. And that's even before the British. They learned that from the British and others who were colonizing Africa and India. And so when we talk about colonizers who come and take over the land, Greenland is a modern day example. And Donald Trump's, insisting that people give up Greenland or he's going to invade or whatever. That's colonizer talk. That's white supremacy talk right there. In modern day terms, you could call it what you want, annexing or whatever. Use a fancy word. It's colonizer talk. It's genocide. It's ongoing. Why would they want Greenland though? If it's just a piece of ice, then obviously military. It goes back to controlling the land, having a stake of the land. And by the way, I'm not saying that I'm not going to put it past Donald Trump that he doesn't see Canada as a country that he would like to take as well. He's already made it clear. And from judging from his threats, we got to take him serious. That he'll do something stupid, whether it's colonizing the entire land or taking part of the land. It's all about control, power and control. And Greenland is just one of those examples. It's a military strategic post that they use, that they've always used, even following World War II with the Nazis. They've always used Greenland as a strategic post for military bases. The United States has a bunch of military hardware already stored there and it's been there for years. So, that's one reason. Look at Puerto Rico. They use Puerto Rico as a military base as well. And if you look at the United States of America compared to all of the countries in the world, we have what? The United States has 800 military bases. Next on the list is China, I believe. And they got I think it's under five. I'm not kidding. You're looking at 800 plus versus what? Less than five. I don't even think China has five. And so 800 military bases around the world tells you what the intention, the motive, and what the agenda is. And that's basically to control people. That's what's up in Greenland. I did want to do this just because a lot of people, have asked what's up with Greenland and how does this relate to the Chicano movement. Hey, a lot of indigenous people are in the north, especially to the north, who we've learned from, including myself, who we've taken spiritual, lessons from, who guided us, who were there for us. who reminded us of who we were, because that's what Chicano means. For those of you who are still wondering what it means to be Chicano, hello, Mexica, Mexicano, Chicanos, Chicanas. That in our blood, we are indigenous. And when we hear about quote unquote Indians or Native Americans, you as a Chicano or Chicana are a Native American. You as a Chicano or Chicana are native to this land. You have history that is rooted in the native land, in the native cause. So when you think about Chicano, or whether you're Chicano, Salvadoreño, Mexicano, Guatemalteco, you are indigenous. And if anybody tells you differently, you better have them, check their academic resources, because they don't know what they're talking about. And then, of course, if you're from, Europe, or, Africa or Asia, your people are from there, you probably don't have that indigenous blood from North America or South Central America, right? And that's understandable. That's cool. You're still indigenous to your to land, right? And that's cool. But as far as Chicanos are concerned, we are indigenous to this land. Greenland is still part of the Americas. And if anybody should be getting that land, it should be the people who were there first, the indigenous people of Greenland. Yeah, give it back to the people, give it back to the indigenous people, the original people. NATO, they're playing games. The only reason they care is because it involves a European country or power in this case, and they're scared of Russia, quote unquote, the boogeyman, China. They label all these countries that are not European, bad countries with dictators and authoritarians. But when you look around, look at what NATO has done and what the Europeans have done to Greenland and to parts of the world that are not white. Okay, just a breakdown of that. I wanted to address that, and again, I'll be addressing some other issues or other topics. Keep sending them in. I like your comments, even if you privately are sending them my way. I'm listening to you, and I'll be addressing them. Okay, I'm out.